Spacecraft became workers. Communication satellites connected continents. Weather satellites watched storms before they killed people. Navigation satellites taught phones, ships, airplanes, tractors, and delivery drivers where they were. Earth-observing spacecraft measured forests, oceans, fires, ice, cities, pollution, and war. Most people imagine spacecraft as rockets and astronauts. But the real spacecraft revolution is invisible. Every time your phone knows your location, you are using spacecraft. Every time a live broadcast crosses an ocean, spacecraft are involved. Every time meteorologists warn people before a hurricane arrives, spacecraft are watching. We did not just enter space. We wired Earth from above. Then we tried to make space routine. That was the promise of the Space Shuttle. It looked like an airplane, launched like a rocket, worked like a spacecraft, and landed like a glider. It was supposed to make space feel normal. But space refused to become normal. The shuttle was brilliant, powerful, and dangerous. It carried satellites, it launched probes, it helped build the International Space Station, it repaired the Hubble Space Telescope, one of the most important scientific instruments ever created. But it also reminded us that reusable does not mean safe. Challenger and Columbia were not just accidents. They were warnings written in fire. Spaceflight is never routine. The moment humans start treating it like routine, it punishes arrogance. Still, we kept building. The International Space Station became humanity's strangest house. A laboratory the size of a football field, assembled piece by piece in orbit, moving around Earth every 90 minutes. People have lived there continuously for decades. Think about how weird that is. There are humans who wake up, brush their teeth, exercise, repair equipment, look out the window, and see the entire planet sliding beneath them. For them, sunrise happens 16 times a day. The ISS is not a spaceship going somewhere. It is a campfire in orbit. A place where humans learned how to live without Earth directly under their feet. But while astronauts stayed near Earth, robotic spacecraft went everywhere. Pioneer and Voyager flew past the giant planets. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 turned tiny points of light into worlds. Jupiter was not just a stripy ball, it had storms larger than Earth. Saturn was not just rings, it was a whole system. Uranus and Neptune were no longer distant blue dots. They had moons, weather, magnetic fields, secrets. Voyager 1 is now the most distant human-made object ever built. A machine from the 1970s, carrying a golden record with sounds and images from Earth, drifting beyond the influence of the Sun. It is so far away that commands take many hours to reach it. Imagine building a machine, launching it before the internet age, and decades later, it is still whispering back from the edge of interstellar space. That is not just engineering. That is patience turned into hardware. Then came Mars. Mars became the place where spacecraft learned to crawl. Landers touched down, rovers rolled. Sojourner, Spirit, Opportunity, Curiosity, Perseverance. Little robotic geologists moving across a dead red world, drilling rocks, taking pictures, searching for signs that Mars may once have been warmer, wetter, maybe even alive. A rover is a strange kind of spacecraft. It survives launch. It survives interplanetary space. It survives entry into an alien atmosphere. It survives landing. And then, after all that, its real job begins. That is like throwing a car across the solar system and expecting it to do science when it lands. And somehow, it does. Then spacecraft became eyes. Hubble saw galaxies, nebulae, exploding stars, and deep fields full of ancient light. It showed us that the universe is not mostly darkness. It is mostly distance. Then the James Webb Space Telescope unfolded in space like a golden flower and began looking deeper into infrared light, into the early universe, into star nurseries, exoplanet atmospheres, and galaxies so old their light began traveling before Earth had complex life. This is where spacecraft become almost philosophical. A telescope in space is not just a camera, it is a time machine made of mirrors. And now spacecraft are changing again. Private companies launch cargo and astronauts. Reusable boosters land themselves like science fiction pencils falling backward. Tiny CubeSats, some smaller than a shoebox, do jobs that once required giant government spacecraft. Space is no longer only the playground of superpowers. Universities, startups, smaller nations, and private companies are entering the story. That sounds exciting. It also sounds messy. Because every time humans reach a new place, we bring two things with us: curiosity and business. The same species that sent cameras to Mars is now planning asteroid mining, lunar bases, military satellites, space tourism, and maybe one day cities beyond Earth. So the question is not just, can we build spacecraft? Clearly we can. The better question is, what kind of civilization are we carrying inside them? Because every spacecraft is a message. Sputnik said, we can reach orbit. Apollo said, we can reach another world. Voyager said, we were here. The ISS says, we can live together above our borders. Mars rovers say, we want to know if we were ever alone. And future spacecraft may say something even bigger. Maybe they will say, Earth was not the end of the human story. Look at the whole history and it barely makes sense. In 1944, the first human-made object crossed into space as a weapon. In 1957, a metal sphere beeped over our heads. In 1961, a man orbited Earth. In 1969, humans walked on the moon. By the 1970s, machines were flying past other planets. By the 1990s, telescopes were orbiting above the atmosphere. By the 2000s, humans were living permanently in space. Rockets started landing themselves, and space telescopes began looking back toward the first galaxies. In one human lifetime, spacecraft went from fantasy to infrastructure. That is insane. Your grandparents were born into a world where space was unreachable. You were born into a world where satellites quietly run modern life. Children alive today may grow old in a world where the moon has factories, Mars has habitats, and spacecraft are as normal to them as airplanes are to us. Or maybe not. Maybe space will stay hard, expensive, dangerous, politically complicated. Maybe the solar system will not open like a new ocean. Maybe humans will look outward, dream loudly, and then keep fighting over the same old problems on the ground. That is the tension inside every spacecraft. It is both escape and mirror. We build them to leave Earth, but they always end up showing us Earth more clearly. From orbit, borders disappear. From the moon, Earth becomes a blue marble. From Voyager's distance, it becomes a pale dot, a tiny point of light holding every person who ever lived, every war, every love story, every language, every city, every grave, every song, every stupid argument, every genius idea, all of it, on one fragile planet. Maybe that is the real history of spacecraft. Not machines escaping Earth, machines teaching us what Earth is. Because the first time we left the planet, we did not discover space, we discovered home. And the strangest part is this: every spacecraft we have ever built, from Sputnik to Voyager to Webb, began as something impossible in someone's head. A drawing, a formula, a sketch, a ridiculous idea. Then metal, then fire, then silence. Then a signal coming back from the dark. And somewhere on Earth, someone listens.